Pablo Escobar, the most dangerous gang leader in history, was one of the poor youths living in the marginalized neighborhoods of Medellín, Colombia. He rose to sit on the throne as the seventh richest man in the world for 7 consecutive years, according to Forbes magazine, with a net worth estimated at $30 billion and total profits reaching $100 billion, including buried money scattered across various parts of Colombia. He earned this wealth from cocaine trafficking and money laundering. He is considered a reference and role model in the world of the mafia and drugs, having managed to establish a powerful and dangerous empire that instilled fear in anyone who heard its name. His cartel adopted the slogan, plata o plomo, which means, take the bribe or you'll die by a bullet. He was the first to invent the idea of guerrilla warfare to expand influence and monopolize the production and export of cocaine to all parts of the world, especially the United States, aiming to control 80% of global drug production. His empire included 400 homes and luxurious villas distributed around the world, private planes, and even a zoo with various exotic animals. He also had his own army made up of soldiers and veteran criminals. At the same time, he was known for supporting football clubs, launching charity projects, and helping the sick and needy, which made him beloved by the poor and earned him wide fame and unmatched sympathy from the public. His cartel became known for violence and corruption, leading to the deaths of more than 100,000 citizens and rival gang members, including police officers, Colombian army generals, judges, state officials, and journalists. He even orchestrated the assassination of the Minister of Justice and the country's leading presidential candidate, Luis Carlos Galán, in 1989. This made him a target of many security and intelligence agencies around the world. Pablo lived a life of kings, full of pleasant surprises and drama that resembled action films. For this reason, many series and movies have been produced about his story. Pablo Emilio Escobar Gaviria was born on December 1, 1949, in the Colombian city of Rio Negro. He was the third of 7 siblings. His father, Abel de Jesus Dari Escobar, was a farmer, and his mother, Hermilda Gaviria, worked as a primary school teacher. From childhood, Pablo was known for his intelligence and boldness in doing anything forbidden. He mastered the art of trickery and deception during his time in elementary school. He would always tell his mother and family about his dream and strong desire to become a millionaire, to lift his family out of poverty, and to live a life of luxury and abundance. During his teenage years, signs of his leadership personality began to appear. He gathered a group of friends and put them under his control at his high school, Luis Carlos Galán Valles. They began small criminal activities such as selling fake lottery tickets, exam papers, and forged graduation certificates supposedly issued by the independent University of Medellín Americana. They also loaned money at low interest rates. In 1966, they committed further fraudulent and criminal acts. Pablo Escobar and his small gang stole tombstones, refurbished them, and sold them to local smugglers. When the townspeople objected, he justified his actions by saying the tombstones belonged to graves whose families had stopped paying for their upkeep. During this period, Pablo Escobar successfully completed high school and went on to study economics at the Latin American University. However, he showed no real interest in university studies and decided to drop out due to his family's difficult financial situation. He then devoted himself fully to his personal affairs and criminal activities alongside his small gang, who continued to improve their skills. They moved on to more serious crimes on the streets of Medellín, starting to steal cars, dismantle them, and sell them as spare parts. Escobar managed to accumulate enough money to bribe civil service employees to alter the records of stolen vehicles, effectively removing police records of the thefts. In 1971, the police arrested Pablo Escobar for violent robbery, assaulting citizens, and causing chaos in the city. He developed a bad reputation among the public and was imprisoned in Medellín, where he spent only a few months. Thanks to his strong physique, daily exercise, and reading books while in prison, his ideas and ambitions began to evolve. After his release, his criminal activities changed. He began recruiting new criminals to help him carry out kidnappings of important figures and wealthy individuals in the city in exchange for ransom. One notable incident was when he kidnapped an influential official in Medellín and released him after his family paid a ransom of $100,000. He sometimes killed the hostages even after receiving the ransom money, as happened with businessman Diego Echevarria Mises, whom Escobar kidnapped and eventually murdered despite receiving receiving a $50,000 ransom from his family. These large sums of money that Escobar collected from the kidnappings allowed him to expand his influence in the criminal underworld and marked the beginning of his entry into the cocaine trade. Then, in 1972, Pablo Escobar began working with the infamous smuggler Alvaro Prieto, who was distributing drugs throughout Medellín. This marked the beginning of Escobar's journey into the drug trade. He gained more notoriety after murdering drug trafficker Fabio Ochoa Trujillo in Medellín, with the goal of expanding his influence in the cocaine business and taking his place and clients. He managed to grow his operations into the largest cocaine empire in history. To further expand his reach, he brought drug barons under his control in each region and surrounded himself with hundreds of loyal friends and relatives with criminal backgrounds. He named his gang Sicarios. As his trade flourished, Escobar enhanced his drug transport operations by purchasing 15 new large airplanes and 6 helicopters. He began organizing air routes between Colombia and Panama to smuggle cocaine into the United States, targeting places like California and South Florida. Later, Escobar purchased 14 kilograms of coca plant from Peru, processed it into paste at a home laboratory in Medellín, and for the first time smuggled cocaine into the U, hidden inside airplane tires. In 1976, Escobar and several of his associates were arrested while returning from Ecuador to Medellín, as they were carrying 18 kilograms of cocaine. In the beginning, Escobar tried to bribe the judges to acquit him of the charges brought against him, but they refused. He then ordered his men to kill the police officers who had arrested him, causing the charges to be dropped and allowing him to walk free. This incident solidified Escobar's approach to dealing with authorities, plata o plomo, meaning take the bribe or die by the bullet. After that, Escobar teamed up with Pacho Herrera, Cheap, and his brother Jorge Luis to establish the Medellín Cartel, a unified criminal organization for trafficking cocaine from Colombia to the United States, Europe, North Africa, and Asia. The cartel also included various individuals from Canada, Europe, and the United States who played roles in shipping and facilitating cocaine distribution worldwide. Due to the rapid success of their drug operations, the Medellín Cartel was generating around $60 million per day. As demand for cocaine surged in the U, Escobar and his partner Carlos Leder decided to establish a new shipping point in the Bahamas, specifically on Norman's Cay, located south of Florida. The island became a major hub for receiving cocaine shipments from Colombia, which sent about 80 tons per month. Escobar eventually purchased most of the land on the island, including the airstrip, hotel port, boats, and built a refrigerated storage warehouse for cocaine. The island became an official logistical base for the Medellín Cartel within the United States. To expand the reach of his drug empire even further, Escobar bought 2 mini-submarines to smuggle cocaine shipments to Mexico, England, Spain, the Dominican Republic, Asian countries, and North Africa. With the profits Escobar made from the Medellín Cartel, he was able to purchase 50 square kilometers of land in Puerto Triunfo, where he built his famous estate Hacienda Nápoles. At its entrance, he displayed the first airplane he ever bought. The estate featured luxurious villas, large properties, 8 swimming pools for artificial lakes, amusement parks for his family and cartel partners, and a private zoo containing around 2,000 rare and exotic animals, including racing horses, sculptures, a bullfighting ring, and a farm with over 100,000 fruit trees, employing more than 700 workers and staff. On March 29, 1976, Pablo Escobar married Maria Victoria Henao. He was 26 years old, and she was only 15. They had 2 children, Juan Pablo Escobar and Manuela Escobar Henao. In 1982, Escobar entered the world of politics. He joined the Liberal Party, ran in the elections, and won by unanimous vote, becoming a member of the Colombian House of Representatives. He was a candidate for the Liberal Renovation Movement, but was later forced to resign due to strong opposition from Luis Carlos Galán, a rival and influential figure in the movement. In 1983, Escobar lost his seat in Congress after the Minister of Justice, Rodrigo Lara, took action against him following investigative articles published by El Espectador magazine that exposed Escobar's criminal activities. At the same time, the United States began pressuring the Colombian government to arrest and extradite Escobar. Due to increasing pressure, Escobar resorted to terrorism and street warfare to defend himself and influence Colombian politics. On April 30, 1984, Luis Carlos Galán was assassinated on Escobar's orders, just 3 months after Escobar had been ousted from the political scene. Following these events and the chaos that spread across the country, Colombian President Belisario Betancourt launched a security campaign to arrest members of the Medellín Cartel. In response, the cartel's top leaders leaders decided to flee to Panama. In June of the same year, they tried to negotiate with the Panamanian president to reverse the decision, but he refused after the press leaked news of the negotiations. The cartel leaders secretly returned to Colombia and declared war on the government, vowing revenge and making their new slogan, "We prefer to die in Colombia than rot in a prison." One of their first acts of retaliation was the assassination of Minister of Justice Rodrigo Lara. Then, in November of the same year, they detonated a car bomb in front of the U.S. Embassy in Bogota, which killed an American staff member working at the embassy. During this time, they expanded their drug operations by opening new smuggling routes through Nicaragua and Cuba, often with the complicity of Colombian authorities, either bribed by money or silenced by fear. In June 1985, Escobar ordered the assassination of Judge Antonio Manuel Castro Jimenez, who was investigating the murder of Rodrigo Lara. Around the same period, Escobar was keeping close tabs on the Colombian Supreme Court, which was reviewing the approval of a legal treaty that would allow the extradition of criminals to the United States. In response, Escobar planned his revenge. Escobar formed an alliance with a dangerous guerrilla group called the April 19th Movement, M19, led by Iván Marino Ospina, providing them with substantial support. Shortly after, the group stormed the Palace of Justice, killing 45 judges and 11 court employees, and burned all official documents. Among the destroyed or stolen files were those detailing the criminal activities of Escobar and his Medellín Cartel associates, which were set to be sent to the United States to support extradition cases, including against Escobar himself. Following the attack, hostage negotiations were initiated, with the guerrillas demanding that the files not be handed over to the U.S. in exchange for the release of the captives. In October 1986, Judge Gustavo Serna, who was investigating the murder of 2 police officers that had previously arrested Escobar in 1978 on drug charges, was assassinated. A few months later, the cartel killed Sebastián Melo, the head of Colombia's anti-narcotics police, and Guillermo Cano Esaza, the editor-in-chief of El Espectador newspaper, which had published several pieces exposing Escobar's criminal empire. On January 24, 1987, Carlos Letter, one of Escobar's key allies, was captured and extradited to the United States, an act instigated by Escobar himself. This betrayal sent shockwaves through the cartel and made its members realize the serious threat posed by extradition. In response, the cartel decided to strengthen their military and financial power, collecting resources from all drug traffickers in the country. Escobar imposed a protection tax of 20% on the revenues of every drug dealer in Colombia, including those not officially part of the Medellín Cartel. The aim was to fund a collective defense against the government. However, some drug traffickers refused to pay the profit tax, but Escobar was determined to assert his control. He kidnapped one of them in Bogota and ordered the abduction and killing of drug baron Tilbury Guez by Nero Silva, one of Escobar's loyal aides. This was because Guez refused to hand over one of his workers, Samuel Toti, due to personal issues with Silva. Because of this crime, the relationship between the cartels was severed, and fear spread among the barons, including Rodriguez and Pacho Herrera, who also opposed the protection tax. Shortly afterward, Escobar's gang attacked Pacho Herrera. Though he survived, he sustained serious injuries. After recovering, he decided to retaliate by bombing the Monaco building, where Escobar's family was living. This act escalated the war between the cartels. Around the same time, Escobar launched a series of kidnappings and terrorist acts targeting high-ranking state officials. In 1988, he kidnapped Andrés Rango, the mayor of Bogota and a presidential candidate, holding him for several months at a secret farm in Rio Negro. A few days later, Carlos Hoyos, the Deputy Secretary General of the state, was kidnapped while heading to Rio Negro Airport. In response to these abductions, the state declared a state of emergency and launched a massive military operation involving around 3,000 soldiers, helicopters, and tanks. They surrounded Escobar's La Hacienda farm, but he was warned by one of his loyal guards and managed to escape at the last moment. In September of the same year, the Secretary General of the state, German Montoya, entered into negotiations with cartel leaders to ease the situation. They eventually reached an agreement to issue an amnesty law, but the United States refused to negotiate with the drug traffickers, so the talks were postponed. Since the negotiations yielded no results, the Medellín Cartel decided to resume its war against the state, this time targeting judges, public figures, and government leaders. Their first criminal act was an attack on the official convoy of Colombian security chief Miguel Maza Marquez, resulting in the death of 21 people. After that, they burned down the headquarters of the Mundo Vision television and radio station and killed Héctor Valdez, the lawyer in charge of the Rodrigo Lara case. On April 30, 1989, Judge Maria Helena Diaz was assassinated. On June 14, Supreme Court Judge Carlos Ernesto was attacked, and on August 18, they succeeded in killing their number one enemy, Colonel Valdemar Franklin Quintero, a staunch supporter of the extradition of drug traffickers to the United States. His assassination led to the official suspension of negotiations between the government and the cartels. In response, the government decided to purge Colombia of drug traffickers through war and formed an elite unit consisting of soldiers and police officers under the leadership of Colonel Hugo Martinez. This unit went out into the streets of Colombia to search anyone carrying cocaine or weapons, began arresting cartel members and confiscating their properties. The army and police carried out over 700 raids across the country and detained around 26,000 cartel members and drug traffickers. The Medellín Cartel responded with a public message addressed to the Colombian people, in which Escobar declared in a historic speech, "If any ordinary citizen kills a member of the army or police, they will receive a reward of $2,000. This was done to encourage the public to challenge the state, and the cartel declared a civil war against the government. They armed over 100,000 men, and the country began to face daily assassinations and terrorist bombings in various regions of Colombia. Terrorism became a daily nightmare threatening the nation's stability. There were more than 300 bombings targeting government buildings, commercial centers, and banks in cities like Cali, Medellín, and others between July and October of 1989. During this period, the number of terrorist attacks exceeded 420, resulting in the deaths of more than 400 civilians and injuries to over 5,000 people. On October 7th of the same year, Escobar's gang bombed 8 political offices in Bogotá. Then, on October 21st, they committed another massacre in which they killed Pedro González, leader of the Liberal Party, Luis Francisco, a member of parliament, Judge Héctor Rodríguez, and journalist Jorge Enrique, shortly after he left the studio where he was presenting his news program Mundo Vision. On October 26th, they carried out an attack on the Hilton Hotel in the city of Pereira, and on November 2nd, 19 police officers were assassinated in Medellín, 7 of them in a bus explosion in front of the police headquarters. In response to these events, the government launched an extraordinary operation, attacking the El Oro farm in Cocorna, where Escobar, Ochoa, and Jorge Luis were believed to be staying. However, Escobar was tipped off in time and managed to escape, though some of his associates were killed, including Fabio Henao, his wife's brother. 87 members of Escobar's gang were arrested, so 5 days later, the Medellín Cartel retaliated by bombing an Avianca airplane carrying 109 passengers and 5 crew members on a flight from Cali to Bogotá. The goal of the bombing was to assassinate the leading presidential candidate, César Gaviria, who, after receiving a last-minute warning, fled the airport and did not board the flight. Shortly after, Escobar's gang placed a car bomb in front of the police headquarters in Bogotá, killing its director, General Miguel Maza Marquez. The cartel then began to formulate new strategies to pressure the government into reopening negotiations. They kidnapped several prominent figures, and negotiations resumed. The drug lords formed a committee to handle legal talks with the government, aiming to prevent their extradition to the United States. However, the talks did not meet the cartel's demands, leading to a new wave of terrorism. On August 14th, César Gaviria officially assumed the presidency of Colombia and launched a military campaign against the mafia, forming a war front made up of elite army soldiers and police officers. His main focus was Pablo Escobar. The first major blow he delivered was the assassination of Gustavo Gaviria, Escobar's cousin and right-hand man. In response, Escobar planned a series of kidnappings, targeting senior government officials, journalists, celebrities, and members of their families. He held a long list of hostages and threatened them with violence and weapons, using them to pressure the government into canceling the extradition agreement with the U.S. or risk having the hostages executed. On October 1990, the Medellín Cartel carried out a terrorist attack in Medellín, detonating a bomb in front of a police station, which killed about 4 security personnel. In January 1991, 26 police officers were assassinated by professional hitmen. In Antioquia, Escobar's gang murdered former Justice Minister Enrique Lo Mertra. At that moment, the government gave in to Escobar's demands, agreeing to release the remaining hostages as an initial step to prove that the executive branch had decided to cancel the extradition treaty with the United States. Shortly afterward, the House of Representatives voted to repeal the treaty. In June 1991, the government convinced Escobar to surrender in exchange for a guarantee of no extradition to the U.S. and a light prison sentence not exceeding 5 years. However, Escobar demanded to be imprisoned in a private facility, claiming he would be at risk of assassination in a regular correctional institution. The government agreed to his request and allowed him to build his own prison, which he did, designing it to meet his specifications. He called it La Catedral. It spanned 45,000 square meters and was situated on a mountain slope 7,000 feet above sea level, providing Escobar and his guards a clear vantage point to detect any potential threats. The area was also known for its nighttime fog, and the dense surrounding trees made escape easy if necessary. As for the guards, they were members of his own cartel dressed in official uniforms. Inside, the prison was a luxurious and comfortable residence, more fitting for a cocaine king than a criminal. From within, Escobar continued managing his criminal empire, hosting parties, and receiving visits from friends and family. Escobar even claimed that his imprisonment was a personal sacrifice made for the greater good of all cocaine traffickers. Impressed by this sacrifice, other drug lords compensated him by paying taxes from their profits. Escobar was aware of everything happening outside through his vast communications network. Despite his promises to stop the violence, his operations continued through 2 partners, Fernando Galeano, nicknamed Negro, and Gerardo Moncada, nicknamed Kiko, who smuggled cocaine into the United States by first routing it through Mexico. One day, Escobar discovered that his partners had cheated him, delivering less money than agreed. He believed their deception was a prelude to taking over his empire, so he decided to take revenge. Once he learned the location where they had hidden their money, his men seized $30 million. In response, Negro and Kiko denied the accusations and demanded that Escobar return the stolen money. Escobar then summoned them to La Catedral. When they arrived, he gave them a lecture about everything they had done behind his back. After they left the prison angry and outraged, they were both assassinated. Escobar then began planning to seize control of their entire organization. He summoned their top employees to La Catedral, using a secret tunnel he had built for escape in case of an attack. The key members of Kiko and Negro's organization arrived at the meeting, fearing at first they were about to be killed. But Escobar informed them that their bosses were dead and told them they could continue working, as long as they recognized him as the new leader, continued paying him taxes, and handed over all of their wealth. He warned them, "If you lie, you will be tortured to death." At that time, Escobar's main enemies were President George H. Bush and the Cali cartel, who were pressuring the Colombian government to eliminate Escobar once and for all, either by transferring him to another prison where he could be more easily assassinated, or by extraditing him to the United States for execution. His brother Roberto constantly warned him not to trust the government. And this is exactly what happened. The government, under pressure, demanded that the Medellín cartel force Escobar to leave La Catedral and transfer him to a regular state-run prison. This demand came after President Bush threatened to invade Colombia if Escobar wasn't extradited. Military trucks began moving toward La Catedral. Escobar was informed that government officials had arrived to speak with him about the transfer to Cali prison. Then, army troops surrounded the prison by land and air, leaving Escobar with only 2 choices: escape or surrender, the latter being the fate he had feared for years. Escobar chose to flee. He waited until 3 a.m. when thick fog blanketed the area, reducing visibility. Escobar and his guards headed toward the prison fence, and one of his staff shut off the prison lights. As darkness fell, his men opened a hidden wall, revealing the emergency tunnel Escobar had previously built for such a situation. They crawled through the tunnel until they reached the outside, then ran for 3 hours in the dark until they reached a neighborhood called El Lado, where they got into a car and headed to a farm owned by Memo, one of Escobar's most trusted friends. Escobar's escape put the Colombian president in a very difficult and embarrassing position, especially since he had been appearing daily on television assuring the public that Escobar was under control, with no valid excuse to offer the Colombian people or President George H. Bush. The Colombian president decided to hold a meeting with the U.S. ambassador. During the meeting, he expressed his willingness to allow the U.S. military to enter Colombian territory to solve the Escobar problem. The United States welcomed the proposal, and President George Bush Sr. was pleased. It was a golden opportunity for him to show strength to the American people and boost his popularity and chances of winning a second term in the presidential elections. He believed this would be achieved by capturing Pablo Escobar, whom he called the greatest cocaine trafficker in history. Soon after, U.S. drug enforcement forces joined with the FBI as well as the U.S. military, Navy, CIA, and electronic surveillance teams. They managed to intercept Escobar's calls from a plane flying over Bogota. President Bush offered a $3 million reward for anyone who could provide Escobar's location. Meanwhile, the U.S. Embassy in Colombia offered $500,000 to anyone who shared important information about him. These offers were broadcast widely on the radio and television, along with a public awareness campaign featuring Escobar's pictures so people could identify him easily. The Colombian authorities took control of La Catedral prison and arrested the guards who worked there. The search for Escobar resumed by monitoring his phone calls and tracking his movements. His location was pinpointed in one of Medellin's neighborhoods, but he managed to escape due to delays in coordination between the Colombian forces and U.S. intelligence. As a result, the U.S. intelligence agencies realized they needed someone else to coordinate with. Colonel Hugo Martinez, the head of the search block, was chosen. Martinez was already Escobar's sworn enemy, especially since he had previously killed Escobar's cousin and right-hand man, Gustavo. Escobar had tried to assassinate Colonel Martinez twice. The first attempt was in 1991, when Martinez was on a family trip to Spain and a bomb was found on the plane, but they survived. The second attempt was in 1992, when a car bomb was discovered on the route Martinez took to work. Later, U.S. intelligence gathered more information through the reward program. A tipster informed them about the whereabouts of one of Escobar's gang members, Prince Alexander, nicknamed Tyson because he resembled boxer Mike Tyson. When forces tried to arrest him, he resisted and was shot dead, with authorities stating he died during a gunfight. In response to the killing, Escobar declared war on the state once again. His gang killed 6 soldiers on the same day and 9 police officers the following day. Escobar offered a $2,000 reward for each officer or soldier killed. For the next 7 months, 72 police officers and soldiers serving under Colonel Martinez in Bogota and Medellín were assassinated. They were murdered either in their homes or on their way to work. During this period, Escobar managed to infiltrate the search block by bribing some of its members, who then informed him of everything happening inside. This was one of the main reasons they repeatedly failed to capture him. One day, the wireless intelligence unit intercepted a phone call between Escobar and one of his associates. They pinpointed his location and sent the recording of the call to Colonel Martinez. However, Martinez couldn't recognize the voice and failed to capture Escobar again, leading him to offer his resignation, which was ultimately rejected. Suspicious, Martinez conducted a secret investigation into his team and discovered that one of his own staff was betraying him, and that some of the information he had received about Escobar was fabricated. As a result, he decided to personally oversee all of Escobar's intercepted communications. However, Escobar was extremely clever. He used codes and anonymous numbers in all his communications. Every time Martinez came close to cracking the code, Escobar would change his strategy. After a long and fruitless pursuit, the U.S. failed to capture Escobar, so they decided to change their strategy. Since Escobar was known to target the families of his enemies, U.S. intelligence ordered the same tactic to be used against him, knowing that he had deep emotional ties to his children. This became evident when a rival gang once kidnapped his children, and he tried everything in his power to rescue them. The second strategy the CIA adopted was one they had used frequently in South America, training and arming death squads. At the same time, Escobar began to suffer significant losses. On February 4, 1993, a car bomb exploded in front of Escobar's headquarters in Medellín, completely destroying the building and killing 7 of his workers. 2 days later, his mother's farm was burned, and homes owned by his family were bombed, leaving his mother and aunt seriously injured. A few days after that, his farm in Bogotá was also burned down. Escobar believed that the attacks were carried out by Los Peeps, a rival group that had vowed to take revenge on him, his family, and his associates. This group included former members of the Medellín Cartel and the families of Kiko and Negro, whom Escobar had previously killed. Los Peeps had joined forces with the Cali Cartel, which provided them with significant support in their campaign for revenge. They began kidnapping, torturing, and killing anyone associated with Escobar, whether criminal or innocent, with a particular focus on his family members, lawyers, and accountants. As a result, many drug traffickers decided to leave the Medellín Cartel and join the Cali Cartel, which was thriving at the time and had significant influence over the government through bribery. Military claimed publicly to be fighting drug trafficking in Colombia. In reality, they were cooperating with Los Peeps and the Cali Cartel to take down Escobar. The attacks on Escobar intensified, and daily death tolls reached up to 9 of his employees and 3 of his bodyguards, including the head of the Colombian police, who was secretly receiving a monthly salary from Escobar. Additionally, a warehouse containing vintage cars worth $5 million was burned down. On March 2, 1993, search block forces killed Escobar's brother-in-law. Fearing for his family's safety, Escobar tried to get them out of the country, as the threat from Los Peeps was drawing dangerously close. However, authorities intervened and prevented them from leaving Colombia. Los Peeps then began bombing the properties of Escobar's bankers and lawyers. On March 10, one of Escobar's main lawyers was found dead, with a note from Los Peeps threatening the rest of the legal team. As a result, the remaining lawyers resigned out of fear for their lives. Escobar retaliated with bombings, but with the increased violence from the Cali Cartel and Los Peeps, his organization began to weaken gradually. At this point, the leader of Los Peeps, Fidel Castano, known as Rambo, contacted the Ochoa brothers, who were in prison, and urged them to abandon Escobar and join him, warning that Escobar would eventually kill them too, just like he did with Kiko and Negro. While the Ochoa brothers were still deciding their fate, public outrage in Colombia grew over the brutality of Los Peeps, prompting mass protests against the government. The government pretended to be cracking down on Los Peeps, and in response, Los Peeps announced the dissolution of their organization. However, the killings and attacks continued. Meanwhile, Escobar was threatening General Martinez, vowing to kill him and eliminate his entire family. Despite the threats, Martinez refused to back down and remained committed to capturing Escobar. During this period, Hugo Martinez, the son of Colonel Martinez, began to appear on the scene. He worked as a member of the Colombian Police Special Unit and was testing a new technique to locate Escobar. However, Martinez didn't want his son Hugo to get involved in the Medellín case, fearing for his safety, as members of this police force were continuously targeted and killed due to the $2,000 reward Escobar offered to the Colombian people for killing members of this police force. Despite his father's concerns, Hugo decided to confront the threats against his family by tracking Escobar's movements using equipment provided by the CIA. With this equipment, he could recognize Escobar's voice and pinpoint his location. Escobar frequently called his family to check on them due to the threats from Los Peeps, and they were living in a secret government building after being prevented from leaving Colombia. Hugo and his father Martinez focused on monitoring the phone calls between Escobar and his family. Many of these calls were with Escobar's son, Juan Pablo. When the Colombian intelligence intercepted one of these calls, they were unable to pinpoint the location accurately due to the use of coded phrases and different radio frequencies, which created difficulties in tracking him down. With help from the CIA, Hugo learned that Escobar spoke with his son for 2 hours every day, starting at 8 p.m. Hugo managed to decipher the code and the words used. However, Hugo lost his position as head of the surveillance team due to the media backlash against Martinez for the delayed capture of Escobar. As a result, the Attorney General decided to remove Martinez and charge him, along with Los Peeps, for the chaos and killings Escobar accused him of. After that, Colombian intelligence confirmed Escobar's claim flames when they found out that Martinez was taking bribes from the Cali cartel. The U.S. intelligence then intervened, requesting that the Colombian government remain silent. They warned that if the news leaked to the press, Colombia would lose its credibility in front of the world. This put pressure on the Attorney General to remove Martinez and pursue new charges against him, unrelated to this event. In October of 1993, the government threatened to expose Escobar's family publicly and remove the guards protecting them, leaving them vulnerable to Los Peeps. On the same day, Escobar's wife requested from the Attorney General a grace period for Escobar to surrender, as she always encouraged him to turn himself in. Later in October, Escobar's son negotiated with the Attorney General regarding Escobar's surrender, asking for several conditions, the most important being that he would be held in the same prison as his friend Roberto, and that his family be allowed to visit him twice a month. The final condition was that his wife and children be moved out of Colombia. The Attorney General promised to assist them in leaving the country to a safe location, provided that Escobar surrendered himself soon. Escobar agreed to surrender once his family was relocated outside Colombia, and the Attorney General began making arrangements for Escobar's family to leave. At the same time, the authorities requested that the embassies in Spain, Britain, and Germany refuse to allow Escobar's family to return to their countries. On September 1, 1993, Escobar was living the final moments of his life. On that same day, he was celebrating his 44th birthday in his new two-story house. Escobar was with only one personal guard, Alvaro de Jesus, also known as El Limón, and his cousin Luzmila, his personal cook. When Escobar needed to make a phone call, he would ride in a yellow taxi driven by El Limón to disguise himself and deceive the police and intelligence officers. He also began making long phone calls to his family. Due to the immense pressure from the government, Escobar decided to hide in the jungle and started planning a new strategy to form a new gang and establish an independent country where he would be the president. On December 2nd, Escobar made a phone call inside the taxi. After getting out of the car, he entered a house while still on the phone. The call lasted for more than 30 minutes. This was Escobar's biggest mistake since starting the war with the state. At that moment, Hugo and his team were able to pinpoint the exact location of the house with precision. They were assisted by the CIA, and they led them to Los Olivos, the city where Escobar was hiding. They waited until he made his second call at precisely 3 p.m. Escobar called his son. Hugo's team and the CIA began searching and inspecting all the streets and neighborhoods secretly. Hugo, carrying a scanning device, led them to the door of a building. They approached the house where Escobar was believed to be. At that point, Hugo stopped using the scanning equipment and began searching between the houses. He noticed a man with a beard behind a window on the second floor, holding a phone and watching the traffic. Moments later, the man disappeared into the house. Hugo became suspicious that Escobar had noticed his white car, and he was now certain that Escobar was inside the house. The forces then stormed the place, and at that exact moment, Escobar had just finished his phone call. The search team entered the house and opened fire on the woman. The team members heard El Limón, the guard, trying to escape through the window and climbing onto the roof. They shot him and he died. Escobar then ran to the roof and hid behind a wall to protect himself from the bullets. He decided to escape via the back street and began running across the wall, but the gunfire was heavy from all directions, shattering the tiles and roof. The team members thought they were under attack by Escobar's guards and requested urgent assistance from their colleagues. They were shocked when they found Escobar's dead body alone in front of them. Their eyes couldn't believe what they saw. Moments later, cheers of joy and victory erupted among them. In Roberto's book Escobar, he says that when the search team stormed the house from the ground floor, Escobar sent El Limón to verify the situation, but El Limón was killed. Therefore, Escobar climbed to the roof to escape through the back street. However, he discovered that he was surrounded on all sides. Having promised himself and his gang that he would never surrender and that he would not allow them to kill him, Escobar decided to shoot himself in the head to deny the government and George H. Bush the chance to claim that they had killed him. When his body was found, there were 3 bullet wounds, one in his back, another in his leg, and a third above his right ear. Roberto believes that the shot above his ear was a suicide shot. Escobar died on December 2, 1993. After Escobar's death, the upper classes celebrated the achievement, while at the same time, sadness overwhelmed the people of Medellín, especially the poor. This was because Pablo Escobar had generously helped them financially, building schools, hospitals, football fields, and churches. As a result, result, he was referred to as Robin Hood. Around 300,000 people attended his historic funeral, and to this day, flowers are placed on his grave. His pictures, often alongside Che Guevara, are sold and used in humanitarian and political campaigns. His legend has also become a part of the tourist attractions in Medellín. His Hacienda Napoles farm was turned into a museum by the Colombian government, attracting thousands of tourists annually. Despite Escobar's death, the press and the government considered it a victory in the fight against terrorism and drug trafficking. As for Escobar's family, in 1995, his wife changed her name from Maria Henao to Maria Isabel Santos Cabal. Juan Pablo, their son, changed his name to Sebastián Marroquín Santos, and they fled Colombia after failing to find a country that would grant them political asylum. Eventually, Escobar's wife successfully negotiated with Argentina, which accepted them with personal guarantees. However, they were conditioned to never engage in drug trafficking or seek revenge against the Cali cartel or others. On October 7, 2006, Escobar's body was exhumed at the request of some of his relatives. They sought a DNA sample to confirm a paternity claim from an illegitimate child and to resolve doubts about the identity of the body, which had been buried for 13 years. After Escobar's death, a live video was broadcast on the RCN TV network in Colombia, addressing the rumors that Escobar was not really dead. Many believed he had hired someone to impersonate him and was living in hiding, enjoying his wealth in remote places. The recurring question that people often ask is, where did the billions of dollars and the immense fortune of Pablo Escobar go? For 7 years, Pablo Escobar was listed as the 7th richest person in the world, according to Forbes magazine. Most people think that the Colombian drug dealers took his fortune, but some others believe that Escobar hid around $70 billion in various parts of Colombian soil, which has never been found to this day. In addition, Escobar's life story has been the subject of many documentaries, dramatic series, and films, especially focusing on the mafia world, drug cartels, and the search for his buried treasure and its hidden locations. Despite the dangerous events that took place in Colombia, Pablo Escobar remains a part of the country's history and a symbol of American intelligence victories. Many still view him as a genius in the drug trade and a role model in the world of mafias. His signature tactic, plata o plomo, which translates to silver or lead, meaning take the bribe or you'll be killed, is still used by drug dealers and cartels around the world to resolve difficult situations.